Peace. So I'm gonna put my technical examples where my mouth is, right? You know, in the last video, you know, the SP-2400 discussion, Goonies 2 of hip hop, question mark. I talked about some of my disappointments and how I saw that design of the SP-2400, you know, the ones that were leaking out on the internet. And, you know, I offered constructive criticism, you know, and maybe I cursed a little bit, but it wasn't done in a spirit of disrespect or anything like that. And, you know, so just so we know, you know, I got a couple hundred people here that I speak to over the last 10 years or something. This is how we keep in contact, especially like about 20 or 30 who we keep in regular contact. And, you know, a lot of us are musicians, you know, and you know, we keep in regular contact. So if you come in on this and you want to see what's going on, what the opinions are, what the discussion is, let's just keep it all respectful. I'm going to respect you, you guys respect me, and we'll, you know, this is our cipher. And if you can't, you know, if you can't really work within those kind of respectful guidelines, it's just, you know, I'm going to close you out because I'm not interested in having some kind of a disrespectful discussion in my very limited free time, right? Right now I got little kids out here chilling. I'm talking to you mother effers about SP. So I'm going to bring you into the arcade and I'm going to show you some examples of nostalgia products, right? Using, you know, respectfully designing, you know, what came before 35, 40 years ago. So that way when you reintroduce that nostalgia product, you respect all the components, not just one or two about the design. And I'll show and prove this to you beyond a shadow of a doubt in just a moment. So some of my key arguments here are about, you know, one, you know, the first thing, which I think is extremely important, is those plastic buttons, right? You know, the setup too. You know, the setup and the orientation of the buttons was another argument I had. The third thing, you know, is something we didn't discuss in the last video, and that's the operating system. You know, I'm all for making tweaks, but if it doesn't function in general the same way, right? If it doesn't show some kind of a natural growth from the original operating system, then you're not using an SP. You know, many companies across different genres of products have been able to evolve, you know, different products, especially in the digital age, operating systems in a way that makes sense. And, you know, based on the decisions I'm seeing with the design, I'm going to have to assume ahead of time that you haven't done that. You know, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but the trend is not positive. I think the decision to make the pads look just like Native Instrument machine pads, MPC clear pads, you know, or pads from any one of the dozens of machines that have come out in the last 20 years that have attempted to be MIDI control devices, I think that's a corny decision. And I just think the way that it gutturally struck me was, that looks pretty corny. Looks just like every single one of the other lightweight machines like the MPC Live or whatever it is. I already told you I'm not a great beatsmith. I'm telling you my concern as somebody who's watching this take place with the experience of having dealt in the nostalgia business before and recreating machines from the 80s so they're realistically playable and function similar to how they did then, you know? And if somebody doesn't like how I do it, right, if they don't want to, then they have the choice to not come and patronize my business or use my machines.
It would be the same if we bought one.
Excuse me? You know, but the result that I'm getting don't look like that, right? So let's take a look at these machines. So we're not talking about one machine like an SP-1200. We're talking about 150 or more different distinct machines that have different operating systems, different computer boards, different components, all of which are older than an EMU SP, right? And so instead of just knowing one, I got to know them all, right? You know? And so when we're looking at design, let's take a look at how we respect the original design when we're making a machine in the present day. Breaking into the joint, can you clarify, Milo, that you are indeed an employee here and that I own High Scores Arcade and the other location in Hayward as well? This is true. So all these machines in here, we know how to work on them. We know what the components are made of, all that kind of stuff. We have a very good expertise level on that. Thank you, Milo. I appreciate it. So every single one of these machines has components that were produced in the 80s, right? And you know, if you put anything in there but the same original component from new old stock, or if you get somebody to manufacture them so they're exactly, every single piece is exactly alike, you know, you would have to make sure that, I'm very sorry guys, you'd have to make sure that all these parts and components were comparable, right? You wouldn't be able to just throw together whatever. So every single one of these has a unique board, you know, a lot more components, lot more components, yeah, no problem, than an SP-1200. That little board that I just showed you, that's one board. Imagine when you're looking at, you know, the complexity of 150 different boards. Now imagine if you're faced with the possibility of recreating one of these things, similar to what you're trying to do with that SP, right? So what you do is you honor the old design. Let's take a look at original Nintendo cabinet, right? Original from 1981, years before the SP came out with the SP or the SP Turbo, right? These are original Nintendo buttons. Factories can be hired to reproduce these buttons, so they're literally exactly the same recipe for the same plastic, for the same mold, the same everything. All this artwork, all original from Nintendo, 1981, right? And so I'm telling you, we got like 150 of these things, so we know them very well. We know them inside and out. This is an original Nintendo joystick. It functions different than other companies' joysticks. The buttons feel differently. And on the inside, you got something called a leaf switch, which is different than a micro switch. The leaf switch is the equivalent to the old SP-1200 buttons. The micro switch, which is what we have in this piece of crap here, that we did not build, is the much less superior micro switch buttons, which feel and behave differently than the original Nintendo ones. That's why when we create an original machine, see, that's the name of our business here, it was created in 2017. When we create an original machine from scratch, we have reproductions of the exact same buttons 30 plus years later that Nintendo used back in 1981 for our brand new creation. All the buttons are exactly alike, and people insist upon that, man. Anybody who really knows it and really uses a Nintendo machine knows that it has to be the same shape and size, and that we have to respect the original design in order to maintain that nostalgia, right? That's why it looks just like every other Nintendo game in the building, right? Original Oregon Trail machine. If you notice, there was no arcade machine for Oregon Trail back in the day. So as a result, we had to recreate one from scratch, right? All this is original artwork. All this design, this machine is from scratch. Designed by me, but mainly Sam Bauman and my wife Megan Livernoche, Jonathan Williams and TJ had a lot in on this. But the point is that it took a bunch of professionals to try to get things just right. And if we didn't, we pay the price, right? By people's opinions of it, right? And so when we want to do an input for something like this, do we use the same old joysticks that they've been using, in the modern age, the way you're choosing to use those soft pads? No, we use an original IBM computer, right? Original IBM clicky keys, right? And people that know about Oregon Trail appreciate that decision, right? What you're doing the equivalent of it is you're using one of these cheapo Korean joysticks. Like, if you want to look at it as something that's a metaphor, you're using one of these crappy joysticks. You're using the more modern, cheaper equivalent than the OG original that you can just feel that thing and know that it's real. That real shit. Look. So in closing, my opinion, even though it's a strong one, doesn't really mean, add up to all that much. It just means that I'm not personally going to buy one. And I have that right. I have that right if somebody puts out their stuff that they want others to review. I have that right to have a strong opinion about it, especially if it's in a classification of things that I hold in high regard, like the SP-1200. When I'm dropping names, I'm not dropping names. I'm talking about my own personal history, my own background, and why these things are important to me, right? And when I'm talking about my suggestions or my critiques, it's coming from a place where I've worked in this level of electronics in the past, and it's coming from a point of view that's at least somewhat educated, right? So if you don't like it, that's fine. Argue with me, tell me your opinion. You're not going to get me to like what I saw, right? If anything, I think something that's positive that can come from this is that somebody who cares about this, made some kind of an assessment, put the opinion out there. I respect the people trying to do this and make this effort. But just like I said with the girl Ghostbusters, just like I said with the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or the Goonies 2, there's a very, very real danger. You can only do this once, right? Slick Rick can only have one comeback album, Rakim can only come back once, Dr. Dre can only have one detox, right? So if we're gonna do this, if somebody's gonna do this and they're gonna take the liberty to use this name and they're not gonna do it right, then they can only do it once, right? Because then what are they gonna do? Come out with an SP-1600? The thing is that everybody's wanted for somebody to make this more affordable or bring it into the modern era so other people can afford to enjoy it. And I'm 100% all for that. But if you don't do it right, if you don't do it right, then you might as well not do it at all. All right, and so I wish best of luck to all these brothers working on this stuff. I'm not in any way trying to be a hater, but I have the right to my opinion. You have a right to disagree. And maybe we can talk about this a little bit more. For now, I'm gonna get back to the other stuff and the other topics, but But hey, look, we all got a right to opinion. I think the shit looked corny, and I'm sorry about that. You know, I don't mean any offense, you know, and I hope you guys, you know, hack that thing into shape. And if you do, like I said before, I'll be the first person to purchase. All right, y'all, peace.